When it comes to the Royal Rumble, you only have one of two jobs. The first is to make sure you don't get eliminated by being thrown over the top rope, and the other is to try and throw other people and eliminate them by chucking them over the top rope. The one thing you should never think of is eliminating yourself, because that is absolutely preposterous. Like, imagine you were an accountant, but you spent all your time running around after a little cute dog. Ain't nobody's accountancy being done then, you are literally chasing after an animal. Because wrestling is one of the dumbest things on planet Earth though, this has happened time and time again, and when it does go down, on occasion, it can be the highlight of the night. You don't understand that, I don't understand it, nobody understands it, it is the ununderstandable, but I do have 8 times this happened, so yeah. My name is Simon Miller, you are watching What Culture Wrestling. This is 8 times wrestlers eliminated themselves for some reason from the Royal Rumble. Number 8, Andre the Giant, way back in 1989. Way back in the late 80s, the Royal Rumble concept was still fresh, and it left fans going, well, I have no idea who's going to win, but I tell you who my favorite choice is, any of these big guys. So Andre the Giant, Akeem, you know the dudes. Because they were so large, you sat there on your sofa going, well, nobody can throw them out. They're too gargantuan, like the Big Show. Sizable dudes were a legitimate threat back in 1989, and these days you don't really get that. Like, if the great KAREY is going to enter the 2020 Royal Rumble, ain't nobody thinking he gonna win. They're probably laughing at him going, ha ha ha, he can't wrestle. But if you met him, you wouldn't say that, he'd eat you. So this meant you did have to be quite inventive, and fair play to Jake the Snake Roberts, he gets a round of applause for coming up with a very smart way to do this, because do you know how he got rid of Andre the Giant in the 1989 Royal Rumble? He just got his snake and he chased Andre the Giant away, and that didn't make Andre the Giant look like a chump, it didn't make him look like a loser. You name me one person on planet Earth that wouldn't run away from a python. Not only that, but these two had a feud where Andre had said time and time again that he was scared of snakes, so this even tied in. Long-term narrative storytelling, I tell you, it makes me smile every time. This was even better too, because at this stage, Jake had already been eliminated by Andre, so coming out the other side of the event, those two could continue to fight, and there wasn't a sad face in the crowd. Number 7, Mil Mascaras in 1997. It would be 8 years before another competitor decided they were just gonna hurl themselves out of the Royal Rumble, but this was a lot like buses. You wait forever for one, and then one does come and you get another, and you're just so confused and you can't keep up with it. The first one is the absolute best one though, because it all comes down to Mil Mascaras, who basically didn't like to lose. He didn't care that pro wrestling was a work or that we had predetermined finishes. He didn't want to put anybody over, and that included getting thrown out of the Royal Rumble. Ain't nobody was good enough to do that, so he just said nope. So do you know what he did instead? He climbed up to the top rope and hurled himself at somebody else who was in the match, but unfortunately they were on the outside, so he had gone over the top rope. Although this one is a little bit controversial, because to get to the top rope, he went through the middle rope to begin with, and as you know, you can't go through the middle rope to get eliminated from the Royal Rumble. You have to go over the top rope. And in no sentence has anybody said the word rope that much. Thankfully, WWE are always changing the rules when it comes to the Royal Rumble. You know, both feet have to hit the floor, and then sometimes Kofi Kingston's just walking around on his hands. So that was it. Mil was out of there, and he didn't have to job to anybody. Number 6, Ahmed Johnson in 1997. Quick little story about Ahmed Johnson, just so you know what a stupid, dumb kid I was back in the late 90s, because I was so upset when he turned his back on the fans and joined the Nation of Domination. I watched every single one of WWE's B programmings like Jacked and Superstars, hoping for some kind of explanation, even though I know we weren't gonna get that until Raw. Damn you, Ahmed, I never got over it. He was having a pretty good Royal Rumble in 97 too, given that early in the night he had beaten FAAROOG by DQ, and now he was in the Rumble itself, and he was having a little fight with Crush, because then Crush was in the Nation of Domination, don't worry about it. However, when he was doing this, from nowhere he stopped, looked towards the entranceway, and just threw himself over the top rope and ran what at first seemed like he was just going backstage. I thought, okay, I guess he really needs the loo, and when Mother Nature calls, you've got to answer. Thankfully, the camera then panned to that position, and it turned out FAAROOG had just appeared, and that had annoyed Ahmed Johnson so much he thought, screw the Royal Rumble, I'm going out of here. But boy, did he look silly. Now look, Mr. Johnson, why, like we've already just talked about, you didn't just go through the middle rope or, you know, lay on the floor and roll under the bottom rope, we will never know, especially because it seems like you're persona non grata when it comes to WWE. But, you know, given that you're meant to be a babyface, like I say, you did come across, well, like a little bit of a numpty. I know you're a big dude, don't come beat me up. I'm just calling it like I see it. Number 5, FAAROOG in 1997. I mean, now we're just getting ridiculous. What the hell was going on in 1997? Because somehow FAAROOG did manage to avoid AHMED Johnson. Don't worry about how, don't worry about the questions. We weren't told that. He then got into the Royal Rumble. I was like, oh, I'm going to win. I'm going to become the #1 contender. I'm going to go to WrestleMania main event. And then he eliminated himself as well. This time, however, he was jumping over the top rope because AHMED Johnson returned, and I guess the real life Ron Simmons was so terrified of this man, he thought, you know what, the Royal Rumble ain't worth it. I am just gonna get out of Dodge. I mean, AHMED was carrying just a giant log, and nobody wants to get hit by that, especially because FAAROOG himself in shoot interviews later down the line would go, ain't nobody wanna work with Johnson. That guy was crazy, and when you were having a wrestling match with him, it felt like a fight. Plus, he was really arrogant, apparently, and just angry and raging all the time. So maybe FAAROOG just thought, you know what, I don't care if it's fake, I don't care if it's real, I don't care if it's storyline, I don't care what it is. I am just going to take myself out of this equation and go and have a cigar and probably drink some beers with Bradshaw. Number 4, Kane. Kane is without doubt one of the best performers in Royal Rumble history. When he was at the height of his powers, every time he entered, you went, you know what, the big red machine may win, and was no point that truer than in 1999 when he got in the ring and eliminated 4 people within 60 seconds. That is where it would all end for Kane though, because minutes after this, a bunch of orderlies who looked like they worked for an insane asylum ran out to try and, I guess, handcuff Kane on the orders of the corporation, because this is when he was feuding with those guys, and they were like, oh, we think Kane is a bit crazy. We also don't want him to have any success. So send out the officials. Of course, before this happened, Kane was able to get a couple of fists in and knock these guys out. But when he realized, okay, my decisions are to stay in the Royal Rumble and potentially go on to the WrestleMania main event or be taken to a damn insane asylum, you know what, I'm just gonna get out of here and I'll worry about the rest later. He probably made the right decision. So he did step over the top rope and chase all these people away. Once again, yes, you're allowed to say, Kane, you could have just gone through the second rope, but he was never gonna come back here again. He had made his choice and he had to stick with it. Also, in case you are wondering, the 1999 Rumble is considered by some the very worst event that WWE has ever put on, but let's just move all of that to one side and remember that for the, 120 seconds that Kane was in this, he was kicking all the ass. Number 3, Drew Carey in 2001. 2 years on, Kane would be involved in another one of these eliminations, but it wasn't him who was taking himself out of the match. It was the one and only Drew Carey. And nowadays people like to crap all over this, but I remember watching it as a youngster and thinking it was absolutely hilarious and that Drew sold it wonderfully. Also, as a little bit of trivia for you, do you know that Drew Carey lasted longer in the 2001 Royal Rumble than The Godfather, than Taz, than FAAROOG, and The Big Show? And that is even worse when you find out that Carey was only in the Rumble for just shy of 3 minutes and spent most of that time just smiling, being like, I can't believe I'm in the Royal Rumble, and watching Matt and Jeff Hardy eliminate each other. It meant he was left standing in the ring by himself, and as that countdown buzzer went 3, 2, 1, he was a bit like, I wonder who's gonna come out next. And unfortunately for him, yes, it was Kane. Thankfully for the comedian, the big red machine took forever to get to the ring and did his pyro, you know, to go and everything explodes. And by the time he was face to face with him, Carey thought, you know what, this is not worth it. And he just took himself out of the equation by, like everybody else in this list, going over the top rope. Didn't hurt him though. He was Drew Carey, probably didn't care about WrestleMania. Number 2, Mick Foley in 2004. When Test was found knocked out backstage at the Royal Rumble in 2004, the sheriff, or the GM of Raw, Stone Cold Steve Austin, was really pissed off. And he said to whoever done this, they were off screen, how dare you try and ruin my Royal Rumble? You are now going to take Test's place. I mean, that was obviously the reason this had happened, so Austin kind of just bought into this, but whatever, you need 30 people. The crowd subsequently popped their ass off when they heard a car crash followed by da-da-da, da-da, da-da-da, meaning it was Mick Foley. It was actually quite a nice swerve. Randy Orton was less than enthused about this because these two were feuding, and that was the reason Foley had put himself in the Royal Rumble, because he wanted to get a lick of revenge. And because Mick is a crazy person and also does these moves that make you go, oh my gosh, he took Randy Orton out with a giant clothesline, but much like he was wont to do, he just let his momentum go as well, and they both toppled over the top rope. Still looks pretty cool. It was just part of the Foley-Orton rivalry, which was absolutely amazing from start to finish, because it only did to remind you that, oh yeah, the former Mankind is one of the best wrestlers ever, or whatever you want to call him, but it also sent Orton himself on the path to superstardom. And don't forget how many people Mankind, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, Dude Love did that for. Guy's still underrated, and we all love him anyway. Number 1 MVP in 2010. And quick side note, Matt Hardy in 2018. MVP did not have a good Royal Rumble around about a decade ago because one, earlier in the night, he lost to The Miz in a US Championship contest, and when he was walking to the ring for the Rumble match itself, the damn Miz attacked him again. Look how long the A-lister has been causing trouble. Miz would officially enter the competition 2 entries later, and while he was able to bust out a skull-crushing finale, magically MVP then got himself to his feet, got in there, and started to whoop The Miz's ass. Much like Mick Foley had done though, when he went to clothesline The Miz, he hit him so hard, MVP also went over the top rope, and all of this was done to try and inject some, well, extra aggression and extra energy into the feud that these two were gonna have coming out of the pay-per-view. Interestingly enough as well, the idea here was to make MVP a superstar and to use The Miz to get there, but that's not what happened. MVP was out the company soon afterwards, and The Miz is still on WWE television in a pretty damn good spot. And we did mention Matt Hardy, so we'll throw him in there quickly, because in 2018, a couple of years ago, he came in the ring as the Woken One, and everybody was excited, was having a feud with Bray Wyatt. They threw a couple of punches at each other, Bray Wyatt sold to the ropes, Matt Hardy ran at him, and like other people on this list, both of them went over the top rope just because Hardy couldn't keep his energy inside of his chest, and it spilled out all over his face, or in this sense, the Royalist Rumble. Should call it that. The Royalist Rumble. Had the greatest Royal Rumble, the Royalist Rumble. And that's that. Who knows if anybody else is going to eliminate themselves in 2020, but I look forward to seeing if it's going to happen. And make sure you leave a comment below. If you want to talk about anything else, like the video, share the video, subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, then over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this and expand your brain. Follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And you may as well watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon Miller, and yes, the Royal Rumble is my favourite event of the year. If somebody came in right now and put a gun to my head and said, Simon, choose WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble, I would choose the Royal Rumble. Bye.